Gore Vidal once talked about the lesson of Confucius, that Confucius was once asked what he would do if he were ever to run the state. That is, if he was in charge, what would he do? And Confucius answered by saying he would, quote, rectify the language. And what he meant by that was if you can control the stories, if you can control the language, then you can control the categories through which people think about the world. And you don't need police and military on street corners. You can colonize people in their own imaginations, in their own heads.
And as you point in the film, one of the most important ingredients of that is repetition, which is kind of why we're doing the real news. It's the daily repetition that makes this thing, shapes people's worldview when they see these events unfold.
Yeah, and that's the way public relations works. It doesn't work by one message by itself. It works by being this cumulative effect over a long period of time. So even if you have one message that comes the other way, it has no impact when the flood of messages is going in the other direction.
Roger, how much were you affected yourself by the sort of official narrative in the media? You had actually booked that concert. Once you got there and you were able to see with your own eyes and talk to people, you changed the venue. But before you went, how much were you influenced by the main narrative yourself?
I'm not sure that it impinged on me greatly. I've been kind of, I hate to say it, but I've been sort of busy doing my work for most of my life. I've worked really hard. I really enjoy my work, so I'm sort of engaged in it. And the story tends to go by somewhere in the background until you're confronted with it face to face in a personal, upfront way. And then you have to respond to it. But further to what you guys were saying about what happens, never mind the theory, which is all very interesting, but you're having a kind of an academic conversation about public relations. The fact is that the system that the Israeli powers that be have, the hasbara, the explaining of their situation, is not actually explaining anything. It's a euphemism to suggest explaining. They are telling a big lie, and they are repeating it over and over and over again. And they are also persuading some of the lackeys that they have in this country, for instance. Hillary Clinton's a very good example of this, to repeat the lie for them. And they all repeat the same lie over and over again. So in Soot's movie, it's very, very well illustrated. In fact, you used it yourself just now. You talked about bombs raining down on Gaza. Okay, well, that's a perfectly legitimate description for what happened, not just in Protective Edge in 2014, but also in Cast Lead in 2008-9. Bombs rained down on Gaza. The big lie that they tell when there's ever any conflict or ever any bombing of anyone is, and the missiles rained down. And in this movie, you hear people saying it countless times. Hillary said it about 10 times in the Navy Yard in Brooklyn, like 2 weeks ago in the debate with Sanders, when Sanders was trying to make the point that there are two sides to this story. That's all he was. But what he was doing there was completely revolutionary, because he's the first politician that we've heard in the United States even suggesting that there might be two sides to this story. So it's really interesting, the language that they use, that's been, well, Soot knows better than I, that has been taught to them by Frank Lutz and others, who've said, this is how you affect public opinion. You lie to people, and these are the words that you must choose to tell the lie with. But our policy is to tell a big lie, and the big lie is this: we are little David, and we are being attacked by Goliath. And Goliath is these awful terrorists who surround us and who are constantly attacking us. And we, much as we hate it, have to defend ourselves. And that is why sometimes we need to take to the skies with our drones and our F-16s and whatever it is that they... And that is the big lie that they tell. And so the narrative, which actually the real narrative is, that exactly the opposite is true. That Israel is not David, Israel is Goliath. And their attacks upon Gaza, particularly because the people there are incarcerated in an open-air prison and are entirely defenseless against attack from the air and the sea. They defend their attacks on Gaza on the grounds that they are defending themselves. They're not defending themselves. What they're doing is they are what they describe as mowing the grass or mowing the lawn, which is a disgusting euphemism to use about the slaughter of neighbouring peoples who happen to be inhabiting land that you covet. This is the real story of what's going on. The story is that the Israeli government, I'm not talking about Jewish people, I'm not talking even about the Israeli people, though a lot of them, I have to say, do support the actions of their government. But this very, very right-wing government that is in power in Israel at the moment is determined, and it's as plain as a pikestaff to see, to occupy forever all the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, and between the Lebanese border and the Sinai. That is their determination, and they're doing it willy-nilly, and they're pretending not to do it. So part of their big lie is, we want to make peace with our neighbours. No, they don't. That is just a barefaced lie. But if you say that, you then get a spokesperson for the Israeli government will come on and say the lie again, exactly the same lie. They'll say it again. We want peace. We're just defending ourselves. The rockets rain down, and they go on saying the same thing over and over and over again. Now, this might be okay in a country like the United States of America for the people to make up their minds about what the true narrative is, except that they're not being given a chance to look at the narrative, which is why you and I are here today, to help Sud persuade the media to show his movie to the people, so the people of the United States may make up their own minds as to what's going on and who is the victim and who is the perpetrator,
right,
whether the occupying army, the IDF, or the Israeli occupation force, whether that's Goliath, whether they are the oppressors, or whether it's the people who are being woken up in the middle of the night and having their kids dragged off to prison, whether they are the oppressors. But the film has to be shown so that people get a chance to see the other side of the narrative.
Okay, so we're going to continue this discussion in multiple parts, at which I hope you'll come back and watch the part 2. But before we go, how do people watch this film?
We have a website. It's called www.occupationmovie.com. And you can watch the movie there. You can stream it for $5, or we hope people will give more. You can also buy the film as a DVD. And so we hope a lot of people will go directly to the site and be able to watch the film immediately after this interview. Another
way you can get to the film streaming, which is I think $5 to watch the film, or you can buy a DVD, is on the Real News homepage. You'll see a copy of this movie poster. If you click on it, it will take you to the page where you can get to the film.
Why isn't it on HBO? Why isn't it in one of the places where it's readily available for large numbers of cable customers, certainly, to get it without them having to search around the net and without them having to find this particular website or without them having to look for it? This is important information for every citizen of the United States to have at their fingertips. It should be in every home so that people can look at it and then they get a chance to start forming an opinion about the situation vis-a-vis Israel-Palestine.
Well, why it's not on Netflix or mainstream media, we are going to get into exactly that topic as we work our way through the interview. So please join us for part 2 of our interview with Sud Joly and Roger Waters on Reality Asserts Itself on the Real News Network.